I'm going to call this meeting to order. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the School District of Waukesha's Board of Education Teaching and Learning Committee meeting for Tuesday, October 5th, 2021. Tonight, Mr. Baumgart is excused, so he will not be here. We will begin our agenda under general business. Stacy, has the meeting been properly posted?
Yes.
Thank you very much. And now is the time for public comment to our committee this evening, where our citizens and residents have the opportunity to speak to our committee. Each individual, since there are 6 this evening, will have up to 5 minutes of time to speak in order for us to hear from our community and then to go on with our agenda. We will signal each speaker at the 2.5-minute mark in order to allow you to wrap up your comments. And then tonight we will have the time projected on the screen behind me and then on one of the sign screens as well for the speaker to kind of know what's going on as far as the time. Hopefully that'll be of assistance to speakers as they come to our meetings. We expect all speakers to honor our time limit, refrain from using any inappropriate language in any manner, and to be respectful in their comments. Speakers who do not meet these expectations may be prohibited from speaking at future board or committee meetings. We also expect the audience to be respectful of the speaker and of the board, and to refrain from responding with verbal comments, cheering, applause, and other behavior that will distract from our meeting this evening. Also, in order to respect our speakers and meeting participants, please silence your cell phones at this time. Okay. First speaker this evening, Samuel Dimico. So, Samuel, please come forward.
Good evening. I would like to take the opportunity to speak once again in opposition to the superintendent's signage removal policy. The superintendent, in late August, before the school year started, implemented a policy that, in effect, is attempting to reverse our non-discrimination policy. Now, why would I say that? Because, his policy is only removing political signage. Well, I'd like to take a look at some of the posters that his policy is removing. I don't see anything political on here. Anything involving an LGBTQ flag, nothing involving Black Lives Matter, Blue Lives Matter, nothing involving politics whatsoever. And it's not only signs that say this is a safe space or all are welcome here are being removed. Signs that just read out our district's non-discrimination policy are also being removed. Again, nothing to do with politics or the LGBTQ flag. And actually, this one was told by Dr. Cook that this one could not be posted. And so in his own words, he is removing signs that are deemed political and controversial. However, in practice, these are the signs being removed. Now, why did I take this to the Teaching and Learning Committee instead of policy, or just wait for the full board meeting? Well, I'd just like to take a quick show of hands. Who on the Teaching and Learning Committee has ever taught in an elementary, middle, or high school setting? One hand. Well, Mr. Dietz, I'm sure you know, as does every single teacher in this district understands, their obligations are to ensure every student feels safe and comfortable in the classroom. And there have been many students in the past and in the future who will share their story about how this has affected them and why they don't support the superintendent's policy. And Dr. Sievert and Dr. Cook, by ignoring the fact that they don't feel safe, comfortable, or accepted, you are allowing that to continue, and you're not doing your job. The district says, and I quote, "The School District of Waukesha does not discriminate in its admissions, programs, activities, services, or employment on the basis of sex, age, race, color, national origin, ancestry, creed, pregnancy, marital or parental status, sexual orientation, physical, mental, emotional, or learning disability, or any other reason prohibited by state or federal laws or regulations." And specifically not allowing this sign to be up just led me to the conclusion that there is something in this you are trying to hide. A non-discrimination policy is not allowed to be displayed at school. And we have never been told why, specifically for this one, or for a poster like this. All we have been told is that they are political. And I see no political signage in my hands right now. I am once again asking for the superintendent to rescind his policy and allow these posters back up in our school because they are not political. They are accepted. These posters are being supported by a bunch of students who come to this meeting and explain their personal experiences with being discriminated against, being not accepted, feeling like they're not safe or comfortable in school. And in effect, our administration in the school district is not responding to those concerns. And at the last Board of Education meeting, Anthony Zenobia said that if what these students are saying is true, then what the heck is going on? So although he says that there's a chance we might not be telling the truth, and says that he could find some students and other speakers to say that this was not the case, he also said something that intrigued me a little bit. I was on the phone with Dr. Siebert, and I asked him a question if any member had had any previous discussions with this, or if any member specifically helped amplify this decision. He said no. Anthony Zenobia, sitting right over there, said, without even knowing that discussion went on, that he was the one, or was one of multiple, that helped this discussion continue and help that decision happen. And so I would just like to take the moment to say that I was lied to by my superintendent. Our superintendent and deputy superintendent are telling teachers they cannot put up the signage in classrooms or hallways.
30 seconds.
And there is a lack of leadership that is coming from our administration right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Samuel. Next, Abel Hernandez. Welcome, Abel.
Thank you. My name is Abel Hernandez, and I want to say that I also disagree with the sickness removal policy, and that I would also like to say that as a student being mistreated by other students, especially speaking Spanish in front of other cultures, especially white, I've been told to go back to my country. It really disappointed me, and that seeing a Mexican flag being held up in a school, especially in dual language classes, it made me proud of who I am and my culture. I'd like to say that these signs may be helpful towards others and maybe make them more comfortable, especially other signs of other cultures and other things, that it makes students feel happy with who they are, and that I believe that we should keep these signs in play of the schools. Thank you.
Thank you, Abel. Next this evening, Paul Reese. Welcome, Paul.
Good evening. Welcome what I believe is always correct and never controversial. So I want to talk about something that I perceive as in a lack of knowledge of history, that we're being taught that this is a racist country, that people are coming up here and saying this country is racist. This country has never been racist. This is not a racist country. People in this country have been racist. There are racists, there are good amongst the worst and the worst amongst the good. But this is not a country that's embraced racism for a very, very long time. It has repelled it and fought against it. It is amazing how we try to classify a nation as something that it's not, or a rock as something that it cannot be. We are ones who perceive things the way it is. There are people who are racist, but we will not define who they are, because historically they come with a D after their name. They have been Democrats from day one in this country who have been racist. They ran the South as racist. They were bigots then, and then the beginning of the 20th century, Democrats like to argue that somehow things flipped. Things flipped. Somehow we never were racist anymore. We don't concentrate on race whatsoever, but things flipped. So at the beginning of the 20th century, there was a president, probably the most racist president in the 20th century was a man named Woodrow Wilson. The guy was an absolute bigot. He single-handedly revived the Ku Klux Klan. It was fading. It had been 60-some years since the Civil War, and it was actually declining in enrollment. The Ku Klux Klan was beginning to wane. And along comes Woodrow Wilson, and he, knowing that the Democrat Party has always need a militant wing, decides to revive it. You can look it up. The first movie ever played in the White House was a movie called Birth of a Nation. It was about the Ku Klux Klan. He single-handedly revived the Ku Klux Klan and gave it a new birth. So then we would jump ahead and we'd say, well, maybe it didn't flip yet. Maybe there was some still racist, so let's jump ahead. FDR was one who interned Americans on the basis of how they looked and what their heritage was. He took Japanese Americans and locked them up just for being Japanese, because he thought that they would turn on this nation. So because of the way they looked, he decided he would intern them. And so, obviously, racist still persists amongst the Democrat Party. And I'm going to jump forward because I don't have a lot of time to 1996. And there was a senator named Robert Byrd. And I remember sitting in up north, I was in Eagle River, and watching a Sunday show when Robert Byrd came up. And Robert Byrd was a Ku Klux Klan grand wizard back in the 60s. And he was questioned about it. Chris Walsh actually questioned him about it and challenged him on it. And Byrd said, well, I no longer think that way. See, I've known white N-words as well. What? I jumped up and I thought, that's it, this guy's done. He'll never be a senator again. He just said that the worst of the people are equal to colored people. I thought, this guy's done. He was elected 3 more times. 3 more times he was elected to senator. I absolutely couldn't believe it. I was like, I was actually shocked. Why would people vote against themselves like this? Why do they do this? Well, people will sell themselves for 30 pieces of silver. There was an apostle who sold themselves for 30 pieces of silver. I go to church with people who sell themselves for 30 pieces of silver. They'll tell me that they hate abortion. They'll tell me that abortion is wrong, that abortion is a sin, and they'll turn around and vote for people who will put abortionists in office, who will support abortion. They'll turn around and vote for these people. Why? They're 30 pieces of silver. It's not that difficult to understand the concepts here. But I wanted to stand up for my nation because this is not a racist nation. There are racists in it, and there still are. And thanks for your 4 minutes.
Thank you, Paul. Next this evening, Mike Walsh. Welcome, Mike.
Hi, everyone. Mike Walsh. So my conversation tonight is really stemming more towards the kids that listen in. And I got to tell you, I left the last meeting, there was about 20 kids that spoke or so. And I got to tell you, I mean, I don't have a heart that breaks real often, but my heart was broken that night. And not for what a lot of people think it was broken for. I don't agree with the message they were asking for. And, I know we talk a lot of DEI stuff, and I think Waukesha needs to have an equality statement. And that equality statement, I'm not a writer, so you guys can modify it however the heck you want, okay? Waukesha school districts will teach without labels. We will teach all children that they have the equal opportunity to succeed when hard work is exercised for personal success. That night, these kids were coming up here and they're abused. These kids are abused. Okay, there's child abuse happening, and it's verbal child abuse. And if you go back and you listen to it again, they're stuck on signs. Let me tell you a quick story of sign. Okay, everybody's seen this home is a what is it now? It's going to escape me now right when I need it. Hate has no home here. Right? People have seen those. You've seen them around your neighborhood. Well, there's a lady in my neighborhood that had one, and I'd like to ask people questions. So she was outside. I said, hey, what's your sign mean? She told me all this, and how everybody's so, equal. She goes on and on and on. So this is a few years ago. I said, oh, so if Scott Walker comes to your house for dinner, you're going to let him in? Oh, my God. Now she goes, ate crap all over me, right, and stuff. I said, I guess your sign's hypocritical, isn't it? She took it down. And we didn't get into a fight, and we talked to this day. But she thought it meant what she thought it meant. She thought that it actually solved an issue, that she is a welcoming person, but she wasn't welcoming, right? We all have that inside of us. But these kids are being labeled as marginalized. They're BIPOC. They're every day there's a new label. I got to Google them every time somebody comes up here and talks and comes up with a new label. How are they going to keep up with it, right? At the most impressionable time of their lives, we are telling them, I'm not, but society is telling these kids that they're less than everybody else. It's happening in the schools. It's happening everywhere. But the school is where you guys have some control. Teachers should not be able to tell a kid they are marginalized. Okay? It's advertising. Like I say, let's hire some advertising executives. And sometimes I say let's fire teachers. I don't mean fire teachers. We got a lot of great teachers, but you always got a couple that ruin the bunch, like every career. But when these kids are just indoctrinated daily with hurtful words by people that are saying, hey, I'm on your side. They're bullying these kids into being on their side. And you know what? I think the people that are up here saying it when they're up here, because I'm listening for for that type of stuff. I think they were victims. I think they were victims of bullying. And who actually victimizes more people? People that were victimized, right? It's just psychology. I barely made it out of Waukesha Public Schools, but I mean, I understand the psychology of it. You know, you actually, if you've been molested, you're more likely to molest. Right? If you've been bullied, you're more likely to bully. These kids are not being trained to handle the bullying. They're hurt by, I hear the kids saying, oh, a person said a bad thing to me. A person said a bad thing to you? My God, I mean, come on. Right? Nobody's training you to not be affected by the words. I want to help these kids. I want a way into the school. Somebody can reach out to me. You find a program for free. I want to help these kids. I don't care what they look like. I don't care what their persuasions are. I don't care what their genders, their ethnicity, any of that stuff. I care more about these people, I guarantee you. People like me, people from my side, care more about these kids than the people that say they care about these kids. These kids are being ruined, okay? And they're our future, and they're being ruined one by one. And these kids need to be taught how to not be affected by the words of others. Not to be affected by that word, right? I'm not the white devil. They're told I'm the white devil, okay? Because I'll wear a MAGA hat, you know? So what if I wear a damn MAGA hat? You can wear a Biden hat, right? And that's okay. So that's hypocritical. You know, I want the opportunity for the school to really take care of these kids, okay? And teach them real life skills how to deal with others.
Seconds.
Bullies will go away when you don't allow them to bully. If you tell them your words do not affect me, they do go away. But you need to have the skills. Parents aren't giving it to them, and the teachers aren't giving it to them. And it should be, a zero label policy. Take down the signs, take off the labels, and these kids will succeed. Now I got to run to City Hall. It's a double tonight. So, see you guys later.
Thank you, Mike. Next this evening, we have Mary Zars. Welcome, Mary.
Good evening. Well, I'm one of the many people concerned about what our children are being taught in the schools with the critical race theory. And by all accounts, I think it is extremely one-sided, and it deals primarily with the color of one's skin. And that is something that is so accidental to a person. And it just seems fantastic that the thing around, revolves around the color of one's skin. If you happen to be white, you're automatically a racist and have white privilege. If you're born black, you're a victim of racism. Is this what our children are being taught? Did the founding fathers rebel against the British just to keep the slave trade going? I think that's what they're being taught with this critical race theory. That's what I read what it's about. I think we have gotten away from the teaching of American history. And so when they're taught false American history because of somebody's opinion, they have no background to have a thought of it being different. I mean, there's no background knowledge that they have to counteract what they're being taught if it's based on somebody's opinion. So I think it's time to go back to the teaching of adequate American history, accurate American history. It's important for the students to know the reasons for the formation of the country, and so many students and adults as well are seriously lacking in that knowledge. This was the first nation founded on individual rights, and now these individual rights are coming under attack. And so there has to be some background to counteract and to have enough courage to have another thought process and not just listen to some emotional person that might have an agenda or a belief system that needn't be shared in the schools. Why not teach about issues that are positive? that teach us about courage and human aspiration. How about Rosa Parks refusing to go to the back of the bus, defying the stupid law of the Old South? Now that took courage. She was arrested. The dream of Martin Luther King, who did so much to change the putrid culture of the dictatorial one-party system of the Old South. And he gave his life in doing so. King said, and we all know, he said, "I have a dream that my little children would be not judged by the by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character," which is much more important than a person's skin color by any normal means. In our history, Abe Lincoln lived his ideals. To quote Lincoln loosely, he said, in order for a person to honestly have equal rights, one must believe the other also has equal rights. Otherwise, you don't have equal rights if you don't consider the other person having those rights. This is what caused the Civil War. As President Lincoln, he gave his life in the quest of bringing the country together. What are we doing to help bring the country together today, 150 years
30
later?
seconds.
Thank you, Mary. Next, we have Vincent Duter. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Vince Duterre, Waukesha resident, father of a student at West, speaking in opposition to the sign removal action. Last time I addressed this committee, I shared how I ultimately came to include the less visible part of the spectrum in inclusion. So not just color, but our LGBTQIA friends. I can't expect people who are inherently against that part of our community to quickly change their minds about how they feel. I don't have a personally compelling story of how I've been targeted or had to step in and stand up for diverse students. I'm white, straight. Other than maybe this instance where I feel like I need to say something because it's just so flabbergasting. I would think that someone that thinks they're a fair and balanced individual should have a hard time ignoring the stories from teachers and students about how this does and will continue to impact our non-white and non-straight kids. That being said, as I concluded last time, I don't care how the leadership here convinces itself to allow for inclusion signs, just as long as they do. So I'm looking to appeal to the people that might agree with this superintendent's action. Think about your role, from action or inaction, as is currently the case. Would you want to lead this district down a path of non-inclusivity, starting with our schools? Do you want our Waukesha community to be one that large employers start to avoid because they can't hire and maintain diverse talent because they and their kids don't feel welcome? This isn't just about attracting or retaining some fringe progressive companies either. I'm part of a massive company that is doing considerably more for inclusion than this district. When I learned of the kind of harmless, non-political inclusion signs that had been up in some cases for a decade that are being targeted for removal, I was floored. It just infuriated me when I see what I have for inclusivity, honest inclusivity at work. It's just hard for me to fathom how our school can't do at least as much. I just couldn't believe how ill-advised this seemed on multiple levels. What do we need to do so that either this committee or the full board take on this topic? It is unacceptable that the superintendent should just sit quietly and ignore everyone that is bringing up legitimate concerns for our marginalized students. Can this body at least pretend it cares?
Thank you, Vincent. Anyone else that would like to address the committee this evening? Okay. Thank you very much, everyone, for your comments this evening. Moving on to our agenda under general business. We've gone through that. Action items, we're looking at approval of the Teaching and Learning Committee meeting minutes from September 7th, 2021. Yes. Sure. Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you. I put a recommended correction in writing. Simply that on item number 4, the first 2 sentences seem to be more of a position statement and not necessarily a summary of the actions that occurred. So I'm just recommending that those sentences could be struck from the minutes. Give you a chance to review them. And then one more item where it was just referred to the board instead of the
Any comments or discussion?
It's not a significant problem. It's just that it didn't read like the rest of the minutes. It's not a summary of action from the meeting. It seems to be more of a comment on position.
Mr. Como?
I'm fine with the modifications.
Okay. Ms. Roddy? Okay. Do we have a motion?
I'd move to approve the minutes as amended.
Thank you. Secretary Piasek?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Mr. Como. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed? Passes, Stacy, 4-0. Thank you. Next this evening, we have Rachel Herman here. She is our Director of Secondary Learning. And my notes say Dan, but, or Dan's here too, yeah. Dan Pachinski, one of our instructional coaches. And then we have someone else that'll be here as well, or maybe more than one, to talk about our secondary math update, where we are with that, and where we're moving with our math program for the middle school and high school levels. So at this time, I will turn it over to our instructional coach, Dan Pachinski. So welcome, Dan. Or Rachel, are
That's
you
okay.
first? Okay.
Yes, I'm going to start us off. I'm just going to
Sure. Hi,
unknown.
I'm AJ Rabel. I'm a math teacher that have been a part of the Math 1 team since it started. And I teach at South.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for having us. AJ did just introduce himself, and that was a pretty modest introduction. AJ has been part of the math implementation team, and since its inception, really, he's been part of the visioning work. He has also supported our new teachers who are launching with this platform. So he has been really instrumental in making this vision come to life. And so you'll see him at future board meetings as we look to continue to update you around the progress of this work. His leadership has been just incredible as we've looked to scale this work district-wide. So he's not just a math teacher at Waukesha South. So we're here tonight to present you with just an update around the big work that's happening. So this is a visual that you have seen on numerous occasions. This is our math sequence and course options. Just wanted to draw your attention to just, again, where we are in our path. So in the 21-22 school year, we have officially implemented our Integrated 1 math course. So it has We're 1 month in. We've visited many teachers' classrooms. We have launched our Agile Mind curricular resource, and AJ is going to talk to you a little bit later in the presentation around how that's going. Into the 22-23 school year, we'll be launching our Integrated Math 2 in replacement of geometry. And our teachers for that course have been very busy planning out the specific units of study, the common assessments that will align to that. And then in the 23-24 school year, that's when we will be designing our Integrated Math 3 in conjunction with some of the course pathways. That was the original intention of this work, which was to go along with this vision to offer students more courses that aligned to their learning and career goals. So just again, bringing you back to our original vision behind this math course. So our curriculum design process, which I know you're very familiar with, just again wanted to draw your attention to where these courses were in comparison to that design process. So we have this district implementation team. That team is composed of administrators, both at our district level as well as at our building level. It's composed of teachers, special education teachers, ESL teachers, as well as the integrated teachers. And the work of that team is really to develop a collective understanding around the big picture work to continue to help us to execute that vision, and then to establish, which we're going to share with you tonight, what we're calling our metrics of success. So with this big picture work, how are we ensuring that, this is successful, that this is having a positive impact on our students? And then looking at monitoring those success measures throughout the implementation. Integrated Math 1 is in phase 3, so we are implementing that course. Integrated Math 2 is currently sitting in phase 2 and phase 3 of the curriculum design process. So again, they're building those units of study, they're developing the common assessments, and then Integrated Math 3 is just starting up with phase 1 and phase 2. So again, just kind of wanted to give you an update. There's a lot of moving pieces to this big work, so just wanted to give you an update as to where everything stood. So this was pretty heavy lifting with our district implementation team, the how will we know if this is working? And so we're going to go over with you now what we are calling our metrics of success. The metrics of success have all been aligned to the 4 core tenets of our math vision. So our purpose in shifting to this model of an integrated approach were aligned to these 4 tenets: to broaden the purpose of learning mathematics, to develop a deep mathematical understanding, to ensure success for each and every student, and to obviously align content, standards, pedagogy, and expectations. And so what our math implementation team did was we took each of these areas, this is our why we do what we do, and we aligned different metrics that we were going to use to monitor the impact of this work. So for the development of deep mathematical understanding, we are going to be looking at baseline achievement data, specifically MAP, Forward, and ACT. We are looking at course grades, and then the percentage of students who are taking 4 or more years of math. So currently students are only required to take 3 years of math. But again, if we are preparing them to get excited about math and find a pathway that relates to their learning or career goals, are we going to see an increase in the students who want to continue on that math pathway? In terms of aligning standards, content, pedagogy, and expectations, we have designed a classroom instructional practice indicator document. And so when we go into an integrated math classroom, what should that space look like, feel like, and sound like? And how is that different from, for example, a social studies classroom or an English classroom? And so for this upcoming year, we're really just looking at using that tool as a coaching tool. So our instructional coaches, Dan, some of our other coaches at the secondary level are just being introduced to it and using it with teachers as simply a learning tool. This is what it should feel like, look like, and sound like, but because this is new and an integrated approach is new, we're not expecting this, people will have arrived at those indicators. The ensuring success for each and every student, again, we're going to come back to looking at that data and looking at specifically our most under-impacted students. So our students who receive EL services, our students who are identified with a disability, our Black students, and then we're also going to be establishing what we call a shadowing protocol. This is a research-based observation practice that allows us to go in and observe students of those specific subgroups to see how are they responding to the instruction in front of them. And then lastly, broaden the purpose of learning mathematics. Dan's going to talk to you about this a little bit. We are going to collect baseline student perception survey data. So we want to know, how do our kids feel about math? I know personally I was one of those kids, and Dan has officially converted me, but I was one of those people who, right, I don't like math. I'm not a math person. I now have a t-shirt that says how to be a math person, and it like is literally a person, and like be a person, do math. Like you're a math person. But we know that there are lots of our kids, lots of our kids' parents who just perceive math as something that you either get or you don't get. And as a result, our students' perceptions when they go in to do higher level math or want to continue on higher level math courses can be stifled. And so we've created, we've stolen a research-based survey that we are administering to our students to see if their perceptions about math change as a result of this integrated approach. We have administered this survey already, and so Dan is going to share in a little bit some of the results of that survey. In terms of the other metrics, the baseline data around achievement, the classroom instructional practice, we are in the process. We just established these metrics, and so we are in the process, and at our next update, we will give you some of that hard data of here's where we were with our baseline, and here is the goal that we are setting as a result of this work. We just established these metrics as a team, okay? But we did collect the baseline data around the student perception survey. We thought that was important since we're just starting out to get that administered before we get too far down the integrated road. So I'm going to turn it over to Dan, who's going to share some of the results of that survey.
Good evening, everybody. So what you're going to look at here is some results from the fall math perception survey. We're looking at really trying to capture how students feel, what's the nature of mathematics, what's their mathematical mindset, how useful they perceive it to be for them in their lives, their confidence with math, and then of course the perception of their teachers. We know that all these things can influence engagement in the classroom and can certainly impact whether or not where students go and choose the pathway they're going to go down. Looking at this data here, we surveyed over 3,000 students across multiple subjects areas and multiple grade levels as our baseline. We'll add all the spring data to this as well to comprise our total baseline. We know that the feelings at the beginning of the year can be very different than they are at the end of the year, so we want to capture both of those to set our baseline for this work moving forward. Not just this year, but many years down the road, so we can actually track this, something we've never done. On the next page, one of the questions we asked students was one of our 2 free write questions. We just asked students, how do you typically feel when you walk into your math classroom? And the reason I want to share this with all of you is just because it's kind of exactly what you'd expect. The bigger the words are, the more those words were mentioned. So you see words like good, ready, bored, confident, right? Excited, nervous. So it runs the gamut of emotions when you walk into that classroom, just like we would expect. And so we're going to track this. We're going to look into those individual responses to see what type of insight we can gain with our math implementation team. This last slide is a collection of questions that really kind of hone in on math confidence. And what you'll see is that the blue and the green for all these questions in this Qualtrics survey, those blue and green are positive responses. Red and yellow, those would be places where we want to focus more on. So if you look at this question, it says, I will never be good at math. And right now, question, does math scare me at all? A little under 40% say it does. For that, right? Rachel just shared. Last one, this one's really important to us is being asked, can I handle more difficult math? And we want to track these numbers. They're speaking their truths. We want students
So I'm going to speak just broadly to my experience as a teacher going through the whole curriculum over the last 2.5 years. We did start this a long time ago. I do want to start by saying thank you for understanding the Herculean efforts that was going to have to be put forward by the teachers here and giving us 2.5 years. My wife is a teacher in a neighboring district, and she also went through a similar process, and she would come home and hear my stories and be real jealous of my experience in the school district of Waukesha and the leadership we had here. But 2.5 years ago, we aligned across all 3 high schools, all the math teachers, and made sure we all had a common vision of what we wanted out of a curriculum and what we wanted our classrooms to look like in an ideal world. We were then given 9 curriculum and rubrics, and we were given time to dive into each of those curriculum and give them evaluations and send the feedback to the district. There were 3 obvious ones that stood at the top, and then we were given time to take those 3 curriculum into the classroom and try them out and play around with them as teachers. All along, we got to meet and talk and discuss what we liked, what we didn't like, what we thought was working, what wasn't working. And then afterwards, when we did decide on one, we ended up having over 40 hours to then dig into the real detailed work. We spent time this summer doing all the math homework just as though we were students to make sure we understood the student experience. And then we were able to zoom back out to then say, if this is the experience, what should the assessments look like? And what should the evaluation and grading look like based on that student experience? And so I think we were able to go into this year with a really good idea of what we wanted to do and how we could get there, and felt comfortable enough that we were able to do it starting day one. From the student's perspective, a couple of really cool things. This curriculum leads away a little bit from the procedural calculation, where oftentimes kids are asked questions that are open-ended, have multiple answers. They're not always right or wrong. Kids are having a hard time with that, like, no, there's got to be a right answer. In fact, I get in fights with kids about it still sometimes, like, no, it's not the answer, it's the thinking, it's the process. What were you thinking? That's what we care about. But also the problems, their interface is much more approachable. So instead of seeing numbers and symbols on a page move around and discussing sort of the procedures of how that happens, they're just being thrown data. And we're going to read through that data, interpret that data, analyze why somebody might have interpreted it this way, why somebody else might interpret it this way. And traditionally, we always go through the math, and at the very end, we get to a word problem. Kids are like, when am I going to need to know this? And you throw them a word problem at the end, and it's got some guy buying 43 watermelons, and it's always this artificial application. This, starting day one, they're living in context. They are reading through the word problems to start before they've even done any math. Next page, another word problem. They're diving into the context, they're reading through it, they're writing what they think it's about, and then over the time you build up to some of those shortcuts, some of those mathematical concepts. And they have a solid understanding of mathematics already, but they just have never been able to connect what they know about the real world, which is very tangible, to some of the more abstract stuff. So by flipping it, the student experience, I think, has been a lot more approachable for all students, but also then a lot more valuable for the advanced students because they are actually getting to the word problems right away and living in word problems all day. It's still early, of course. With everything, this is going to take time as well. But I think I'm happy with where things are now as a teacher, and I think the students are too.
Talk about some work that's going to be continued. That work, first of all, it's going to continue to be supported by our coaches, continue to be supported by co-planning efforts across the district. We just set up a WebEx team where all of our Math 1 teachers are collaborating with one another virtually. That work's going to continue that way. But we also need to get ready and prepared to implement integrated Math 2 come next fall. So these are some things that are going to be taking place this winter and spring. The first thing that we want to make sure we're doing is learning from the Math 1 teachers, building off of their success. So we're connecting people who have been on our curriculum team at the Math 1 level with those overlap. There will be a lot of new teachers on that adventure with us. get into co-planning again, just like AJ described. And then what we've done, what we've never done in the past, is we've said, we're investing in this curricular resource. Let's commit to common expectations. So how are we going to use it? How much are we going to use it? Not just like it's there and I'm not going to use it at all as a teacher. We've invested in it, and our teachers have really come up with a solid plan to say, this is going to be 90% in line here with this 10% flexibility to help get the kids engaged. That process has been absolutely phenomenal by teachers, and how hard they're working, I think the process is, they're bought in, right? That's the work that's going to happen with Math 1. Or Math 2, we won't be coming to the board with any real big action items, but we'll be coming with updates and letting you know how that work is going. Also this spring, we're going to be digging into integrated Math 3. This is where we're giving students another layer of opportunities or options once they reach that integrated Math 3 level. Whenever that is, whether they're a 9th grader and they're reaching integrated Math 3 or they're a 11th grader reaching integrated Math 3, when they get to that point, we want to give them choices and options that really align to where they want to be as mathematical students. Align with their career, also that align with the college expectations that are coming out. That kind of maps out how we're going to be doing that. We'll be looking at some research that's happening across Wisconsin in terms of their entry-level courses, trying to align our options with those, build up more application-based opportunities. We'll be coming, just a heads up that we're going to be looking, once we have those UBDs done and set out, we know we're going to be using Agile Mind as a resource. We'll be coming back to you with our completed UBDs course options come early next fall. Last big part, and our teachers are real excited about this too, is that we're just going to be starting our phase 1 of middle school mathematics. We're looking at the vision, looking at our previous data, looking at our current trends and standards, really getting into a place where the middle school team is going to be working on going through these phases starting this spring. We could be at a place where we're piloting as early as May and then into next fall, but we wouldn't be starting or having any long ways ahead, but we know that time matters.
Questions do you have for our team?
Dr. Piazzik, go ahead.
Thank you. I am a math person, so I don't think I need the shirt, but this is exciting. First thing I'm going to say is just in my experience as a parent is we have amazing math teachers in our district. So I think we're very fortunate to have just an incredibly talented staff. What you're talking about with culture is really important, and just that confidence that kids can do it. And I know we're talking about secondary math, but that culture piece really starts early. And my experience, at least from the technical career path perspective, is that kids are starting to make career decisions in terms of elective decisions in 6th and 7th grade. So how does this all connect back to elementary school? Because I would love to see the data from, 1st grade through 5th grade regarding how kids are feeling about their ability to do it and if they can be challenged more.
So I will say that starting like Dan spoke to, we're starting our middle school process, which is that 6th through 8th grade visioning team this year. So we'll definitely start to look at some of those data pieces as part of that process. We will be looking at a historical review, and part of that is how are our students faring in mathematics at the middle school level. Dan works pretty closely with Rose Palmer, who is our elementary math coach, And so I think that what you're posing is a great question for them to dig into, and that's something that we can definitely follow up with you on. I'm not sure at the elementary level if we give any type of perception survey like we're giving at secondary, but it's something that, again, they can definitely follow up on and look into to see what might connect and what might be there as we continue to scale the work.
Absolutely, Rose and I did talk about that. We actually scaled back from almost a 40 question questionnaire to what we have now is 12, so that in hopes that we can bring it down. We need to make sure that it's at their level.
Great.
Just to follow up, I think it would be really valuable to start kind of explaining the pathways in fourth grade. Because I think when you get into fifth grade, there's a lot happening. There's fifth grade graduation, there's preparation for middle school, and it seems like that math placement, while I know that educators and administrators are doing work behind the scenes to get the math placement right, I don't know that parents necessarily understand what's ahead of them. And I think it would be important to understand early in fourth grade, this is kind of the path that you're on. This is where you're likely to be in sixth grade. This is what it means for your child in high school, so that parents can kind of weigh in. And I know that we have some students who are reasonably advanced in math and take summertime to get caught up on things. So I think just starting that early would be a good approach.
Mr. Como.
Yeah, AJ, you had mentioned comparison of our design process, perhaps to some other districts. What are some of the differences?
I think one in particular that was really valuable was the idea of starting off big picture. I mean, we were reading about new math development during the Cold War and why our math looks the way it does, right? And how that might have impacted the structures that are still in place. We read the National Council of Teachers of Mathematics review of the state of mathematics in America currently, and some of the things that are working and aren't working. And so we were able to go into this already with a common vision of that we need to make a change, or at least can get significantly better if we did. So we were already motivated to start. That's one of those things where if you don't have that, then all of a sudden you get teachers disagreeing with each other about what should be happening next, and that's a recipe for disaster in any implementation, right? And so that takes time, that takes difficult, rich discussions. Instead of just, here's 3 curriculums, let's do the math, which math problems do we like, which formats do we like? Those things matter less, the formatting of the textbook or the curriculum, than does this accomplish what we want it to accomplish? And we were able to all be aligned on that going in, which was valuable. That's one of the things.
I appreciate that. I can't relate to it because I haven't been through the process, but that's why I was asking the question. And Dan, you had mentioned that we're doing something a little different, that we're having the teachers, in terms of flexibility, have about 10% flexibility, but really trying to stick to primarily what the team has put together here. How are you going to go about, how are you assured that that's really going to be happening?
The biggest thing to it is that they're holding themselves accountable. So most of the time right now, there's layers of this. That's one layer. They're working in their professional each other to stay on pace. So make sure that the lessons there, if they pull out a question, they're pulling it out for a good reason. Adding a question, they're adding it in for good reason in terms of content. Another layer for us is that we're collecting data around their common assessments that they built out. We can pull that right from Infinite Campus. We can also have times throughout the year that we'll have benchmark assessment checks where teachers will bring those assessments to the table. We'll co-grade those together and really calibrate not only grading.
Are the PLCs at each local building, or are they cross-district?
The PLCs that would be happening at each local building, and they happen in different ways and shapes and forms right now. And then when we get to the big benchmark co-grading activities, that'll be district-wide, middle schools and high schools.
Okay, Thank you.
And I would add to that, the 90-10 is not a variation of the curriculum, it's around the curricular resource.
Oh.
So teachers don't have an option of whether or not I follow the curriculum. It's if I want to
There's
supplement.
no variation in that.
Correct. It's
Okay,
do I want to
gotcha.
supplement
I
Agile Mind?
I misunderstood
with,
that.
No, that's okay. I think it's important to clarify because, we might have a group that needs an additional lesson, that Agile Mind, like I'm not getting this group and I've got to bring in something else. And now maybe my pacing's off for a few days, right? That we have to always account for, but we're not giving people permission to veer away from the curriculum that's been developed. That is our guaranteed and viable curriculum.
I appreciate how you gently restated that. Thank you.
Sure.
Anything else? It seems to me when you apply math to the real world, like AJ, you said with the word problems, at the beginning and the end and throughout, first of all, I think that would help with engagement. And I also think it would help with retention because I'm seeing how it's applied in the real world and it makes more sense to me. And it would make me curious about what else it could be applied for. So I think that's, to me, just a great teaching practice. I had another question about the survey. When students rate themselves, do they give you feedback why? Do they give you, is there a spot where they can write comments like, to that, so that you could maybe compile additional information to get to that why?
Yeah. As an implementation team, we looked at possibly adding more free response style questions. One that you did not see that you will see in the future, ask the question is, what helps you learn math? That's another additional one we put in, but we didn't want to tag each one of the other 11 questions with a free response. Because we didn't know if we'd have the capacity to dig into all those plus those free responses.
Sure.
But as we go through, we might see the need to ask that.
Right. You might see some common themes, or that could be addressed, or that would be fairly obvious. I think that could be narrowed down and looked into.
Absolutely.
Right? Because a number is one thing, but why is a lot of additional information. Yeah. Anything else? Very impressed, as always, by this group, our math department, like Dr. Piazek said. Very fortunate in this district to have not only you here, but those back in our schools. Just an outstanding department and doing great work, and this is just another example of it. So thank you very much for sharing. You're always welcome here, and we look forward to you coming back to give us an update.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah.
Thanks, Dan.
Next this evening, we have a pilot summary of the Advanced Placement English 11 text called The Language and Composition. And we have Rachel Herman here once again, our Director of Secondary Learning, that will be presenting this evening. So Rachel, I'll let you finish your water, and welcome and thank you for being here.
Thank you.
She needs a name tag. Nameplate.
Thank you. So I am here tonight to talk to you about the adoption of the AP textbook to support our English 11 language and composition course. This is really just to serve as just an introduction to the textbooks. Next month, we have Nancy Ronke, our district literacy coach, who will be attending with some of the teachers who I will talk about who are on this AP textbook selection committee, who will also be attending to share more specific details about the text, about their experiences with the text, some student samples, etc. Okay. So our rationale for the adoption of the book is first and foremost that AP revised their course and the exam that goes along with the course in 2020. And so in 2019, the teachers came together to begin to vet resources to support that new curricular revision. The current textbook that had been used to support the class dated back to 2007. AP generally recommends that your course textbook does not exceed a 10-year window. They want you to stay relevant with the materials that you're using to support their class, and so they were long overdue for an upgrade around the textbook that they had. The review team that was looking at the textbook, we had representatives from all of our buildings. eAchieve does not offer this course, so they are not currently a part of the team that vetted the textbook. The book that they chose to pilot was The Language of Composition, which you all have in front of you. It's the 3rd edition, and it was published in the 2021-22. I'm sorry, it was piloted in the 2021 school year. So you have as an attachment, and I just kind of highlighted a few of them, the AP textbook adoption form. And what this form is this really takes all of the requirements that we are obligated to follow when we go through a textbook adoption as outlined by board policy. We had the teachers really look at, does this book support those tenets, and write you a detailed description around how this textbook aligns to those. And so these are just a few key points that, again, are also included in that handout. So first and foremost is really the authors of this text are the chief AP readers for the AP exam, and we're heavily involved in the course redesign. So as the teachers were vetting the resources, this is one that just a direct connection to that new course revision. It is the top recommended textbook to go along with the new AP course. The organizational outline of the textbook is incredibly effective. So if we know if the AP exam that the students take requires them to do a rhetorical analysis, an argument essay, and the way that the book is set up is really designed to first and foremost teach them how to tackle those skills, and then it gets into some of the specific units of study where they read different articles, they read different narratives to be able to put those skills into action. The online resource that accompanies the hard copy of the textbook has several different resources to align with the AP test. So it comes with a test bank, it comes with practice materials for the teachers to use, and again, directly aligns. The essays that are a part of the text that you have were chosen because the authors explored enduring ideas, articulated complex reasoning, and built compelling arguments. This is really central to preparing students to take that AP exam. In looking at some of the sample questions that the students are asked to answer, they are no joke. They are really difficult questions. And so the texts that these students have to explore and practice with need to be incredibly complex, incredibly compelling. They have to create argument for the kids. They cannot be reads that don't generate that true, authentic discussion, right? And so in looking at this anthology, it really allowed students to be able to build those compelling arguments. The text is designed to reinforce synthesis skills. Again, that's a key part of the AP exam, and then develop their own voices and perspectives. Again, we don't teach students what to think, we are teaching them how to think. And then for each theme that is covered, many different writers of very diverse backgrounds have been included. So I think you'll see as you go through the book, and again, the teachers will talk about that when they come next month, how they go to select, because it's a pretty thick book. They don't teach every article, every essay that's in there. And so how do they go to select essays? What that process looks like? They'll talk to you a little bit about that next month. Just within the first year of the pilot, we did see an overall increase in our AP test scores. So our overall mean increased from 2019 from a 3.0 to, in the year of the pilot, a 3.09. Specifically, students who scored in that level 4, we saw that increase of from a 23 to a 27%, which was significant. We were excited to see that, especially considering, again, pandemic year. So again, it's just one, obviously the AP test is a huge thing that our teachers are preparing the students for. But in addition to that, our teachers saw increase in student engagement as a result of that more relevant and complex text. So again, when we give students meaty things to talk about, to dive into and discuss, we see their engagement levels rise. Student writing improved as a result of the scaffolding through the support provided in the textbook. So again, the chapters in the beginning that really target the how-to of rhetorical analysis, of synthesis, that really helps the students to be able to tackle those skills. And the teachers, again, their textbook, if we think about it, was from 2007, they had been spending quite a bit of time bringing in supplemental materials to prepare students to tackle that AP exam. With this pilot, they were able to now spend time differentiated instruction, providing feedback, planning their lessons rather than curating text collections. And so that was also incredibly beneficial. So as a next step, this month we're going to be, in the month of October, we're going to be administering a student survey to collect some feedback around the text. We are looking at sampling both a student body that took the course last year, so our current seniors, as well as current juniors, to get some different data, because some of our current juniors will not have dug into the book as deeply as, again, some of our seniors will. We're going to continue to meet as an AP 11 team to continue to develop common assessments, common units of study to align to that new course revision. And then we're going to be back in November with some of our teacher representatives to share out details about how the resource is being used. And then we'll share out the results of the student survey at that time. So what are their thoughts about how the book has, how it's benefited them? And then come December, if the results of our student survey continue to be positive, again, the book, so far, this is the book that the teachers right now are recommending for adoption. And so provided that the student recommendation continues to be positive, in December we would foresee seeking a recommendation to adopt, and then we would begin to develop a professional development and implementation plan to ensure fidelity to the plan once implemented. I feel like I went through that really fast, so I apologize if I did. And you can slow me down and I'll ask for any questions you have.
Go ahead.
Dr. Piazza.
Go ahead.
This one I need the shirt for, because
This one you need a shirt
happy
for?
place.
I have you covered. Lots of shirts and books.
Thank you for the extra time to read all 1,500 pages. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
It is fascinating, actually. Now that I'm not in high school anymore, I find it more interesting. But I am curious, do we have data on the percentage of students that take the class that actually take the exam? Because I'm wondering if we had and I'm not trying to criticize the numbers. I think they look reasonably comparable. I'm just kind of curious if we had kids not take it last year because of all that was going on, and if we have any feedback from them as well.
I will find out. I believe we have that number, but I will find out.
And then maybe compared to other years, what's the percentage of kids that actually go all the way through and take the exam?
Yep. I know, based on our policy, we have a policy that if you get the weighted grade if you take the exam. So I know for most of our AP classes, it is fairly common that most students do take the exam, but I will do some digging on that.
Regardless of how they do on the exam. That's a requirement for the weighted.
For the weighted grade, correct. Yeah.
So just as a follow-up, I mean, one of the things that appears to me just from, going through 1,000 pages or so is that there's a lot about the content of this course that's about bias and interpretation. So how do you evaluate bias in a text when the theme of the text happens to be about bias?
So I think that's a great question that the teachers are definitely going to be able to tackle next month, as they most certainly know how to tackle that in the context of the AP course versus they're not teaching bias, but they have to teach students how to evaluate bias. And there is a significant difference there. So they present students with essays, with material that are definitely right. When you read them, you're like, this is clearly right, got a angle, got a side. But then it's usually paired with the other side or with an opposing viewpoint to allow students to then formulate their own opinion. And so the teachers next month when they come are going to give you some kind of concrete examples of what that looks like. Because if you look at just the unit at a glance, like I was looking, for example, at the gender unit, right? And one of the first things we talked to the teachers about was, okay, show me what this looks like then in action, right? They're going to come next month with that, and I will be sure that when we do, that question is like clearly answered for you. I know it's a hard, that's the nature of the course.
I mean,
right?
by definition, I think this is something that also we want to help parents and students understand. By definition, we're putting controversial topics in the context of composition and asking the students to evaluate that. That does not necessarily mean that we're taking a position on those topics.
Absolutely.
But I think that's certainly what I'll be looking at the text in that context, understand how that's presented and not necessarily, what the right or wrong answer is.
Absolutely.
Mr. Coleman.
Yeah, I had the exact same question. I very well asked Kelly. I appreciate it. And one of the things that helped me a little bit too is the teacher material here. Unit 6 was talking about this unit asks students to recognize and account for biases and limitations within the evidence they are utilizing in an argument. Students should develop an initial thesis statement and line of reasoning based on a pool of evidence that is fairly consistent, and then the teacher should introduce contradictory evidence that requires the students to revise their thesis statements to account for it. So you're getting the multiple perspectives and curveballs. There are differences. There's another point saying that people, I forgot which unit, it was a unit talking about how you can come to the same, essentially, position, but from different points of view, and to how to appreciate getting to a position from different points of view. I thought this was very engaging, and I appreciate the scaffolding. I didn't know what scaffolding meant when I first read this, but when I went to this, I knew exactly what you meant by scaffolding. So thank you for including that as example. I would appreciate being able to see some examples from the bank of questions, and I don't know if we can have access to those or just give us a few.
I actually have right here, I pulled one up just because I thought maybe it would come up. So this is, for example, a sample. Eminent domain is the power governments have to acquire property from private owners for public use. The rationale behind eminent domain is that governments have greater legal authority over lands within their dominion than do private owners. Eminent domain has been instituted in one way or another throughout the world for hundreds of years. Carefully read the following 6 sources, including their introductory information for each source. Write an essay that synthesizes material from at least 3 of the sources and develops your position on the notion that eminent domain is productive and beneficial.
So with that last part, there's 6 sources. I think that's where people want balance, right? We've talked about balance in this room. So maybe we should be looking at balance. Is the balance there or not? But that's a great question, and we as a governing body have never chosen to do that. That's an aside. That was just more of a joke.
And if I think it's great. Again, the teacher team.
A few more examples, if you could have those, because now we're seeing. Okay, these are the types of questions that our students are going to be asked on the exam. And so how do they build to that point? And again, this whole scaffolding approach and really focusing on, maybe I'm just going to call them building blocks, right? You got the basics, just working on the small things at first, just an argument. A paragraph. Don't even have, an introduction and conclusion. So talk through some of those components. And when I went through this, I'm thinking, wow, this seems this seems really logical. When I was learning how to write, I was very confused. I didn't have one. I need one of those shirts too, or I needed it. College helped straighten me out there. Had to learn how to write in college. Well, but the examples then show us that end. What are we shooting for? Because that's a pretty powerful question to be asked and to come up with an answer that makes sense and to build arguments, on it. So, yes, thank you.
Anything else? Rachel, are all teachers piloting the textbook? Okay. I didn't know if some were still using what they had before. Okay. Is that typically how it goes during a pilot?
Depending on the number, because there's such a small number of teachers who teach AP 11, all of them are doing it. I'll use our social studies. I just had our middle school social studies teachers here because there's so many.
Right.
We're only doing a small group of teachers, so it really just depends on the number of teachers who teach the course and the scale of the pilot.
Makes sense. Anything else? Great. We look forward to having you come back in November.
Sure. I'll bring T-shirts for everybody.
That'll be great. And thank you just for doing such a really good job of prepping all of us for this meeting.
Of course.
I think with all your handouts and with all the information, it does make sense to us a lot more than just hearing it the first time tonight. So
Please always feel free to reach out and ask questions. I'm happy to.
Yeah. We know that you're more than willing. So that's awesome. Thank you very much.
All right,
again.
thank you. Have a good night.
Yep. That concludes our discussion information items this evening. Ms. Landish, did you have anything?
I do. Thank you, Mr. Dietz. I just wanted to, not on the agenda, but just a few shout outs tonight. I wanted to give to a few groups. I wanted to sincerely thank the tech department for all their work as of late. As you know, we have implemented the automatic library book notification system, and that is up and running. And so our tech department has spent a lot of time with that. And so I truly want to thank them for their work around that. We only had 807 families opt out of the notification, so just a point to give the board. Also wanted to thank the library media professionals for their due diligence over the past several weeks. We have reviewed over 100 books that have been brought to our attention over the, I would say, summer and the past few months. 57 of those titles stayed as originally recommended. 14 were adjusted from the middle school level to the high school level only. 4 were removed, and 13 of the titles were nowhere, anywhere in our libraries. So I know I've given you weekly reports on this as a board, but I definitely just wanted to recap that and thank the library media professionals for their work as well. So also wanted to forecast before your other business that the November meeting here will entail an ACP annual update. Secondary math will be back again for an update. Amy Riebel will be here with several data updates, at least as much as is not embargoed. And our middle school principals will also be here to let you know how the new house model schedule, et cetera, is going so far. So that's on the agenda for next month.
Thank you so much. And moving on to other business, recommendations from any of us on the committee for future meetings. We did have some, Ms. Landish, I think you already covered them. Which is, I mean, it's going to be a good meeting, and they always are, so something to look forward to. Very good. Okay, that concludes our meeting this evening. The meeting will be adjourned. Our next Teaching and Learning Committee meeting will be held on Tuesday, November 2nd at 6 p.m. here in the boardroom. Have a good night, everyone. Thank you.